Welcome to Grown and Sexy Sistahs Talk. This is real conversation for real women about real life. I'm your host, NiseyGail, and I have a special treat for you today. Today, I'm hosting the very first episode of Grown and Sexy Sistahs Talk, Nights at the Roundtable. During the Roundtable Series, I will be chatting live with a set of my grown and sexy sister friends. Each episode will talk about current situations or topics that are important for improving our women's overall health and well-being. In this first episode of Nights at the Roundtable, we're discussing the recent drama with the R.Kelly situation and how it's caused a ripple effect of issues in our community, as well as ways we can prevent something like this from happening to the women and young girls in our lives. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy episode number 1 of Nights at the Roundtable. Much love, be blessed, and stay grown and sexy, sisters. We'll speak soon.
Welcome. This is Grown and Sexy Sistahs Talk. This is real conversation for real women about real life. And tonight we're doing something super special. We're starting our first roundtable conversation. Yay! Clap it up for the roundtable. Yes. So we got all the grown and sexy sisters in the house. We may or may not want to use names. I'm not sure. We may or may not. Feel free to use names. I'm not going to go around the table and be like, introduce yourself. But I'm so glad that the ladies could join me here. This is going to be the first episode of our Nights at the Round Table. Yes, that was a cute little play on words. I came up with that myself. So glad that you guys can join me. And today we want to talk about, well, first of all, we know that there was this huge controversy about the R.Kelly thing, and of course that's been talked about into the ground. However, some other things came up when we started to have that conversation, and it was alarming to me and concerning. And because I like to bring conversations to the table that normally aren't talked about, this is why we're here. We're here to just discuss and debrief and really have a good conversation about how we can prevent these kinds of things from happening in the future. So we're not just going to talk about the R.Kelly thing, because we all have our opinions about it, right? And so before we even started recording, we was in here bickering about it. And I'm like, wait, ladies,
we were bickering. We were just discussing.
We
were just discussing.
And I'm like, ladies, let's save it for the video. Let's save it for the podcast. Save it for the round table. But yeah, so definitely. One thing I did want to point out, I have ladies from all walks of life here. I have some educators here. I have a psychologist, a teaching psychologist here, because we really want to get into the meat of this. And we want to not only talk about what happened, but we want to understand the why behind it and how we can prevent it from happening again. So thank you guys for coming out. I've got ladies who have women in their family and who have daughters and different things like that. So there's a whole bunch of us, and we're just going to get into it. Okay, so now, let's talk about, okay, of course I said we're not going to talk about him specifically, but I feel so strongly about this. So for any of you, hold on. So for any of you who are friends on Facebook, okay, so I don't usually go back and forth about stuff on Facebook because, I mean, you can really be there for a long time. And you can lose a lot of friends, right? You can lose a lot of friends, which is exactly what happened. Because we started going back and forth. Obviously, I watched the documentary, which had me literally in tears. Like, I couldn't, stop crying because it affected me so much to see the women who had gone through this and the young girls and the families. And so we all have our opinions. I see everybody like, oh, they'll give opinions in a minute. However, I really want to talk about why. Why did this happen? We saw him and they tried to show us his background and the things that had happened to him in his past as a young child and the abuse that he suffered. And so they tried to give us a little bit of the why. I love the fact that they had psychologists on there, right? Because they had to kind of break it down for us too, because as a community of people, as Black people, we don't normally do the psychology thing, right? So this is something that Dr. Tanya and I have already talked about on the podcast, and it's about, we as a community, it's a hush-hush thing, right? It's something we don't talk about. We brush it under the table. However, that was 6 hours of us seeing what happens when we brush this kind of stuff under the table, right? And so when people started getting into it on Facebook, it had somebody I used to work with, and she was saying, oh, well, I can understand because when I was 14, I was fast and I was involved with the older men when I was 14, but it was because I was fast and da-da-da. And I started to think about, well, okay, well, it makes sense how promiscuous she was as an adult when I was working with her. And then she started to go, well, if you want to hold people accountable for things that happened a long time ago, then we got to go back to slavery days. And I was like, where's the unfriend button? I can't do this with you. Oh my God. I can't do. Well, it happened so long ago and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what don't you understand? Sex with an underage person is a crime. Period. There's nothing else. Now that's my opinion, okay? However, that's the law too, right? Is it just me, or is it not law?
Time doesn't make any different, right?
Okay.
So 20 years ago or now.
So let's talk about.
And it's illegal. It is illegal.
Right.
It is illegal.
Yeah.
Period.
So why are so many people defending it?
That's a good question. It
I
is a
think
good
the
question.
battle causes him.
I don't know.
R.Kelly.
Let's talk about it.
I think some of them are defending it because of some of the things that they carry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so for someone
I hadn't
to
thought
say,
about that.
So for the person that you're talking about, for them to say that, you know, she was with a 21-year-old when she was 14,
right?
then is she really telling her full truth? Was she molested as a child, which caused her to be promiscuous at 14 and to seek out older men?
Okay.
So that's like a whole different
That's
thing,
a good perspective.
you know.
Yeah. So because you guys seen, like, a lot of women came out, and even, okay, so let's go back, okay, because I'm going to say, we knew a long time ago there was something going on with R.Kelly. Okay, we've all known this for quite some time.
It's not new news.
It's not new news, right?
And he told you.
And he told us when he was making his music.
He told you.
Right?
And what Mama Maya say? When people tell you who they are, believe them the first time.
The first time. Okay. So I want to talk about that because the reality is I'm guilty too. I still kept listening to the music after the first time that all this stuff came out and the Aaliyah stuff and all that. We were like, okay, was it true? Was it not true? We kind of leaned on the side of, okay, well maybe it's not true. Is that right?
Because
nobody knew it was as bad as it was.
Okay.
I'm not on Facebook, so I haven't had the opportunity to talk to anybody who has tried to defend him, which I can't even figure out what I would say to someone who would say that because it sounds so ridiculous.
Right.
So in the example, I guess if you were a young person, 14 or 15, sleeping with someone older, you're thinking, well, I didn't do anything wrong and he didn't do anything wrong for that one situation. But I don't know how you can look at everything he's done and not put some blame on him. And like, same thing, I think all of us, he's a pervert, he's kind of a weirdo, and everybody knew, but I don't think anybody knew, the extent of it. I mean, other than the people who were around him, because I remember watching that like, oh my good, like, this is crazy.
This is deep.
It was not as bad as, I didn't think it was bad. Because, I mean, folks were just covering up for him left and right, and he beat this charge, he beat that charge, he has skated for years and years and years.
And I think that's the big thing, what you said, is that, you know, in our community, we don't always think that things are as bad as they really are, you know, and so it gets, you say brush under the table, I say swept under the rug, and then things get so piled up that you can't walk for tripping over all of the bullshit that we just swept under the rug as a people. Like, our rugs are mountains in a lot of households, a lot of in our community, a lot of churches, and they got mountains.
It's almost like money and power, you know, the amount of money that he was producing and power, that was more important than the young girls who were getting hurt, because he was like, wasn't he the king of R&B or what, you know, up there?
The Pied Piper.
I mean, he was. So the people just, that's what folks were focusing on.
Well,
not
I think
what he was doing.
one of the things with us culturally is that we tend not to want to correct or knock down people that we feel like have made it. And that was one of the themes that I kind of saw through a lot of the documentary was that people are like, oh, you know, this kid from, you know, the south side of Chicago, nobody thought would make it, nobody thought would ever be, you know, this big R&B singer, now has made it. And so I think for even a lot of the people that were in his camp, it was like, oh no, you can't, like, he's finally made it. So one of us made it. Like, so we can't be the one. We can't be the one to knock that person down. And I think you see it a lot for a lot of celebrities that have done various things. It takes us a long time as people to all of a sudden really, you know, take back the curtain and see that, oh, they really are, you know, this person. They really are, have done these things because we just don't want to see it because I think it's one of us and we have a hard time holding them accountable for the things because of our struggle, you know, and that quote, making it and wanting to, you know, be a certain thing. So.
Right. Because then you also saw people saying, well, he's a brother and they ain't trying to take him down because he's a brother. Did you see that comment?
I think for years that's what it's been, is that someone behind the scenes, some person, you know, was trying to take him down, and so, you know, it was defended in many ways.
I have a question. So how much do you think those in his inner circle really knew?
They knew.
I
think they knew it all.
A lot.
I think
from the documentary,
they covered up a lot for
they
him.
really, like, some of them really seem to be somewhat remorseful now to say that I really do bear some responsibility in this because I just didn't. I watched it. Like, I know a portion of it. They were saying something about in the studio. At times he would have like a bed in the middle of the studio and various girls would come. And so even other, you know, celebrities are coming out now to say, oh, well, yeah, I saw certain things, or, you know, one time we did some music together and, you know, I said something because I thought it was a bit much, but then, you know, obviously you didn't say enough. And then it's like, well, I just didn't do music with him anymore. I just didn't, you know, come around anymore, that type of thing. So, yeah, I think in the music industry, the majority of the people around him really knew what was going on, but they just chose to turn a blind eye or to assist with it even. Because I don't even think it was just turning a blind eye, but it was really assisting with it, helping with getting these girls in and out and doing all of this stuff.
So it goes back to piggyback on power and finances. Finances and power came into play with this whole chapter. Because they were on his payroll, they didn't want to say much.
Because they didn't want to lose
famous,
their job.
They didn't want to lose their job. They didn't want to bring him down at that time because he was hot at that time. So we go back, actually, if we fast forward to now, he's not as hot as he used to be, and now everything has crumbled. So because it's crumbled, everybody want to go back into, well, he did this at this point. Now they want to speak about what could have occurred in his past.
But they thought they saw.
And they probably know now that they'll have many people to back them up. Like, no one wants to be the first person to go against R.Kelly and then no one else, and where are you going to work? But now they just have to say one thing, and I bet everybody will jump on it.
I think it's just more too like a sense of social accountability with things, like, because with this instance, we won't even talk about Bill Cosby. That's another thing. And then like even like the Me Too stuff with everything that's going on. So I think people are just hopefully waking up and just saying like, okay, we're not going to tolerate this. Oh, my sister went through this. Oh, my mother went through this. And this is like, enough is enough. So I think it's a lot of people getting their voice and wanting, being okay to speak their truth and just being able to elaborate and stick up for themselves, and then having that support because they know people are going to stand up behind them too.
See, and I don't think those girls have been able to stand up and speak their truth. They've been exploited yet again with being dug up and drugged through the mud, having to relive their story again, or just relive it and tell someone. And no one has really advocated for those young women, which is sad. I never watched the R.Kelly thing. We'll never watch it. I just know what I saw on Facebook or whatever, and it's just so much energy behind it, and it was just so big and so powerful. But I think for the wrong reasons personally. I don't think that the focus should be on R. Kelly. It should be on all of the girls, all of the young women that he, abused in whatever way. who's doing something for them, who's looking out for them. They're not a part of the Me Too movement because they haven't gotten a chance to say, me too, this happened to me. And then they were kids. So does the Me Too movement help for children, right?
Right. Okay. Would you want to say something, Pete?
You can go back to me.
Okay. All right. And you must have looked at my little notes because
I can't see
question number two. Question number two. Thank you for the segue. Question number two was about blaming the victims, right? Because we saw a lot of that. We saw a lot of, well, she should have known. She should have known. She shouldn't have went. They should have known. The parents should have known. This one should have known. That. However,
I blame the parents. You don't blame someone who's young. 14 or 15, you blame the adults. So you blame R.Kelly and you blame the parents who fed their daughter to R.Kelly because in hopes of R.Kelly making them a star.
Okay, all right. Go ahead. We want you to say what you're going to say before you forget, girl.
Okay, so first of all, let me just make this really clear. I think that this situation is so big that there is enough blame to go around. Everybody can get their piece.
Yeah.
And there is a piece for everybody.
So the girls.
The young girls.
No, not the girls. Let me just say this. I'm not going to say that they are not 100, that they don't have a piece in that 100. I'm going to be honest with you. I have a 15-year-old at home. And even though I know that there are a whole lot of things that he's done and said that are acting out because of his experience and his pain. There are a lot of things that he's doing that are totally and completely inappropriate. He has a choice. He's a choice. He's a choice. But and to say that they bear absolutely 0% of the blame is to say that a 15, 16, 17-year-old has no idea what they're doing. And that's not true.
I totally do.
I disagree.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think
that their decision-making process is probably very, very, very distorted because there's a whole lot that hasn't fully developed yet.
Okay, and that's what I was going to say. We're going to bring the science because I like the science. Okay.
The mental, there's a whole lot that hasn't fully developed yet. Their sphere of experiences, it hasn't really gotten to the point where they really know enough to handle a whole lot of adult situations. But I know plenty of 13 and 14 and 15-year-olds who know enough to say, this situation that I feel like I'm about to get pulled into is way more adult than what I should be involved in.
Not at the moment.
Now, in the heat of the moment, I get all of that too. What I'm saying is, we cannot overlook the fact that you know some right from wrong. Some. I'm not going to say you know it all.
Okay, I got
because we keep trying to convince our 15 and 16 and 17-year-olds that they don't know it all, right?
Okay, good. Okay.
If my son takes my car when he's 15, or my son goes and tries to hold up a convenience store, I would say yes, he knows right from wrong. There is not another party that is trying to influence him. But when you put a young girl and a grown man, it's not only on the young child anymore. I think an adult plays some role into what she's doing. So that's why I get you on half of it, but I don't think that in this situation when pedophiles are preying on young girls, I put the blame on them because he's literally brainwashing. I don't think it's the same thing as going out and robbing a liquor store, taking my car, or something like that.
The adult in the situation has the responsibility to put the brakes on all of it.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because like the conversation that I was having just a little while ago about, there is a crime called statutory rape.
Yeah.
Okay? And there is and help me out here, Doc. There is a state of mind called pedophilia. Okay? And the state of mind called pedophilia is a person who's attracted to a child because they're a child. Right?
Okay, now stop. Doctor, we need to understand what's going on here.
Especially with the kids.
So let's go back first to the statements earlier about children's abilities, or teenagers, because we'll be specific and say teenagers or preteens' ability to really rationalize and kind of know what's going on in the situation or what's to come in the situation. So there is some truth that there is some degree of right and wrong that they do know by the time they get, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. But their ability to really process through an entire situation is where it all falls apart. Okay. So, the science and psychology of it is that their frontal lobe is developing. This is the piece that lets all of us be very rational, that we can look at a situation even in the heat of the moment, and we can even get started going down the road with that situation. But there's something that always says, when we say, well, something told me, that's something that told you. That was your frontal lobe. That was that part of your brain saying, there's danger here. There's something going on. Like, you really shouldn't do this. Well, what happens with teenagers is that this piece doesn't even get fully developed till you're 25. So you got to think about that piece, even though they look very developed. By the time they hit puberty, body-wise, all of that shoots off and it starts growing. But their brain is far, far behind. And that's the piece. So yes, you might have the body to match, being that older woman, being that older, girl, and sort of looking the part. But your mind has not caught up with that. Your brain has not caught up with that. So you still have this underdeveloped brain that is, having spurts here and there because it's starting to grow. It's starting to develop that piece. And so that's where you get that, you think you know everything, but then all of a sudden in the middle of stuff, it falls apart and you're like, I didn't even think that was going to turn out that way. You did, because you didn't have the ability to think it through until the end. And so it's easy for adults to manipulate kids if you really think about it. Teenagers in particular. If you know what things excite them, and that's the other piece is that this back part of record exactly. So the back part of their brain is through puberty is highly active, which is why you get that impulsivity, which is why you get that irrational decision making, that need for excitement, because that part of their brain is, if you look at any brain scans of teenagers, it's extremely active. And it doesn't calm down until really once you get towards like 20, 21 years old. So your brain has sort of a need for that adrenaline, and has a need for that level of excitement and those kinds of things when you're in those teenage years. So again, if you just pay attention to teenagers, and particularly teenage girls, for a good 30 minutes in the cafeteria, wherever, you can figure out what drives them and what things, they're attracted to and what they want. And then it's just a matter of really luring them in. It's just a matter of giving them those things that they want. And even though in the middle of that, they might think, oh, I don't think this is maybe the best thing for me, or I want. But again, if you continue that pattern of manipulation, which is what you were talking about, then there's a grooming, and those kinds of things that take place. The other thing that I want to speak to is the idea that if any of those girls had any sorts of traumas that they brought with them into these situations, that played a large role in them not being, and even now, like when you see some of them and they still don't want to leave, and people are like, well, they're grown now, they should be able to leave, they should. When you are traumatized over and over and over again, it shifts and changes your brain. Yes. And so you don't even think and respond to things the same way other people who haven't been traumatized will respond. Right. And so they might be in a state, whereas for them early on, survival was to just freeze. To just stay, to just be. Some of us, when we see dangerous situations, our brains kick in and say, get the hell out of here, run, right? Sometimes, for some of us, our brains say fight, and we will fight and scratch and claw until, whatever it is over. For some people, safety is in just being still. Safety is in not fighting that situation. Their brain says safety is to just stay put.
And conform.
And conform to whatever it is, because that's what's going to keep you alive. That's what's going to keep you safe, is conformity, not fighting, not fleeing.
And you don't know what those girls are being told. You don't know.
Right.
That's a piece that you don't know. So we can't say why they won't leave, or that they, bear responsibility in it. When someone preys upon you, you bear no responsibility in that matter. I don't care if you are 14, 15, 16, 18, some even 18-year-olds. I mean, you think about it just like with being raped. Like you it's no control.
And that's a good point, because even a lot of times with rape victims, some people will say, well, why didn't you run? Or they'll say, I couldn't. Like, I wanted to in my mind somewhere, but I just couldn't. And again, because their brain said safety for you is just to stay and to be still and not to fight and not to run. And for a rape victim, that's a hard thing to come to grips with as to why didn't I, try to fight? Why didn't I do any of these things?
Right.
No, I know this is not on our agenda,
That's
but it
okay.
reminded me of the little girl Jamie Kloss, who was
The
just
one
found.
who just
Yes.
was found.
And yes, and I thought that was so interesting, because unlike so many who aren't able to do that, I mean, she was held for 3 months. That was a good amount of time for him to brainwash, but something told her to get out of there. Which
She kept fighting. She kept looking for her moment to where she could get out and where she could get away.
And she did. So then we were saying, you never know what background, because I guess if you already were a child with low self-esteem, maybe not, but she must have. I just thought that was so amazing that she said, I am out.
Right. And she just kept waiting for her moment and
she
waiting
got
for her
out.
moment.
Or if you've been molested, or if you've been at some point, or beaten or abused in some manner, with that trauma. So this is just like something else, especially when someone is giving you things up front, and you may come from a family who don't have anything, and so that whole shiny object syndrome is real on so many different levels, for lots of people, especially black folk in general. Anything shiny and new, we there for it. We there for it. We are there for the whole thing, right?
I like it. That's
and
so
flashy,
true.
and for those girls, giving things where they didn't have. If I would just look at, from the research department, Dr. Tanya, the research department, to look at those girls' background and see what type of background they came from. And I know that, I don't know if it's 2-parent households or not, but sometimes people don't have, and when you don't have, being given, money, especially at teens. Everybody knows, we all were teenagers, and if our parents didn't give us what we wanted to have when we wanted to have it, let somebody come along and say, well, here's $20, sweetheart. Here's $15, sweetheart.
Or even attention.
Or attention.
That's what I was gonna say. It could just be attention, or just the feeling of being wanted, or even just seen at the moment. Because I think a lot of, like, the girls who tend to seek those type of things is because they're lacking in another area, or dad is not there, or the parents went through something, so could just be that as well.
And a good manipulator is not going to be evil to a girl in the beginning.
Right.
It's with them the entire time. And then once you have, messed with their entire mind, then you go and start being, mean or, hitting them or something.
Because
like
it's the cycle of abuse. It's a cycle of abuse, and abuse has a cycle. It's a clear 7-step cycle. So.
And for me, the reason why I'm so passionate and unfriending people on Facebook is because my mom, I was unfriending people. I'm like, and another thing, I don't want to be your friend anymore. And afterwards, I was like, I probably shouldn't have done that, but I'm like, you know what, I'm free. So, but my mom was in an abusive situation for over 20 years, and I think for me that is what makes me more passionate about it, because I know what it looks like, and I was raised in that type of environment. And even now, we always think back and go, why didn't she leave? Here's the front door, she could leave. However, she never felt that she could leave. right? And so we had the psychologist on there saying on average, it takes a woman 7 to 10 tries to leave an abuser.
Exactly.
Period. Don't worry. Don't want. If you've never been inside that situation and you don't know what it feels like to be afraid in your own home or afraid of a person, you don't know what it feels like. And having everyone tell the same story about how he secluded them from their families, cut their families off. Well, that's the first thing,
that's
right?
That's a step of that cycle.
Right, exactly.
You
because
on me.
your family doesn't care about you. They don't love you.
Yeah.
The one girl, I think he even changed her. I think it was his wife. He changed her phone number, and she didn't even know. Somehow, the family was trying to contact her, and her number had been changed. But it was that, and everybody had the same story. Once she got married to him, we didn't see her anymore. We didn't hear from her anymore. He cut them off. He wouldn't let them talk to each other. He wouldn't let them speak to people on the outside. He wouldn't let people, if he made them look forward, and when people, this is what they saying, but to me, if you got 50 people sitting down, or 30 or 20, and they all telling the same story, something is around there that happened that way, and so having these conversations and saying, this is what happened, this is what it looks like, this is what you should be aware of, like beware, this is what they do, they taunt you with things, they say they're gonna make you famous, they give you things that you think you're not getting at home, they give you attention that you weren't getting.
Now that's for somebody who is like R.Kelly, but what about your uncle or your aunt, or what about the preacher, the deacon, the lay woman of the church? What about those people? So like, what language do you use around that for children? Right, and that's something big because again, in our community, they in the church, honey. Oh my God, in the church, so much abuse. Not only in black churches, but the Catholic Church, right?
Right.
Now the nuns then came out for, I mean, I always thought so. I went to Catholic school. Some of them nuns, honey, they was about butchers the day is long. And that's my truth. But, now the nuns have come out to, being accused of molesting kids. And so who has conversation about that? Like, it's more, I think this is so much deeper than R.Kelly. Especially in our community. What about your uncle? What about your cousin? What about your brother? What about your what about those people? What
You've been reading my notes again? Number 4 is
I can't see.
You are reading my notes. So number 4 is
that's that energetic.
We are on the same wavelength, honey.
Listen.
So my number 4 question was, what is the signal? All the people who were defending it, what is the signal that we're sending to our young women about what's acceptable and what's not, right? Because what happens now when the uncle, the cousin, the person in the church, the coach, remember those girls with the gymnast who were being abused by the trainer or whatever?
But even in college, at Penn State, with the football coach.
Oh, yes, that's true.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And so now that was another thing for me, was like, okay, we can't be, as a community, and especially as women, we can't be out here saying, well, maybe because now the girls see that, the young girls, we know, okay, the young girls don't be on Facebook, right? They be on Instagram and Snapchat or whatever. Okay, I get that, I'm a little old. However, the young girls are hearing us defending that stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean they saw at the concert that he had in Chicago where grown women were saying take me,
right.
So
I'm just here for the music, right? I'm just here for the music.
Kidnap me, then as a 13, 14-year-old girl, what do you? Then you're like, well, maybe there isn't anything wrong with this.
And so when the uncle comes and does these things. Now they don't know what to do because we saying it's okay because R.Kelly did it. So let's talk about that.
So I think that there are 2 messages that are really loud. I think there's a whole bunch of different messages that are coming at them.
Okay.
To be honest, from a whole bunch of different perspectives and different directions. But 2 that are really clear to me. One, I think that the Me Too movement is real prominent, and I think that one message that they're getting is I should speak my truth.
Okay.
Okay. And for Black people, we ought to call it hashtag finally Me Too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
But now you know the Me Too movement was started by a sister.
It was
The one that was on
Right.
there. I can't think of her name.
Absolutely.
And
She
it was in the documentary.
immediately
She
co-opted
started
by
it.
white women.
Right.
Right. That's a whole
Started
other
it.
conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's life.
Even in trauma, they gonna steal that
Right,
from
right,
us.
right.
Even in our trauma, push you out the way. Wait a minute, it happened to me too. Yes, it happened to me too. I was molested by the white man.
But that's a different podcast. We
Yeah,
want to
that's a whole
talk.
different
That's why it
podcast.
had to be part 2. That's gonna be part 2.
So I think that they are getting it that I should speak my truth.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the one positive.
Mm-hmm.
But the other flip side of that is, I really think that they're also getting that what's going to happen after I speak my truth is totally and completely unpredictable, and it's anybody's guess. And the reason why is because, like you're saying, you have people defending him, people talking about how wrong they are. Then other people are putting all of the blame on the parents. Then there are people that are saying, well, no, everybody should go to jail. Him and anybody who's ever associated with him.
Right.
Him in the inner circle. You know, all of these different, you know, perspectives and all these different conversations about who did what and who's to blame and how much of the blame and all of that, right? So I think that the message they're getting from all of that is that the rest of us are just as confused as anybody.
But also, how about the fact that if nothing happens to them, young girls are gonna say, "Why tell?"
Yeah.
I mean, if nothing's
Right.
gonna happen,
Is there any safety
Like,
in telling your truth?
yeah, like all those
Will it
people
matter?
told, and nothing was done.
And-
Everybody knew.
And how do you speak your truth? Because they don't even know what their truth is,
Who to trust.
or who to trust to speak their truth to, you know. And so we can say, so for grown people, the women who are coming out with the whole Me Too movement, you know, again, like we said earlier, there's power in the collective, right? But there's no power in the collective for children. Who's collecting these children's stories and speaking out for them, or these young girls who were molested and you know, who's speaking out? Who's speaking out for them?
Right.
No one's speaking out for them.
Anybody?
Well, I think that piece has to, it has to start at home, really. Because there are, like, I did a short Facebook Live just on the trauma side of all of this.
Right.
And there was someone that came on and said that she really wasn't able to kind of fully speak her truth about being molested by a family member until she was in her 30s, because earlier, when she was younger, she told her mother, and her mother didn't believe her. So I think that, again, like, that there have been many, many times in our community where we have, as women, as young girls, we have tried to speak our truth to our parents, to our mothers.
Right.
And, you know, for various reasons, either it's, oh, that couldn't have happened, or I don't believe this, or, you know, even with, you know, mothers who have boyfriends and things like that, it's like, oh, you're trying to steal my man, you're trying, you know, you get some,
We've heard
some
all of
really
that.
outlandish kinds of responses.
Right.
And so I think that as the Black women who are in, you know, these young girls' lives, we have to always, because it starts with us, we have to make sure that when and if they do find the opportunity to speak their truth, then we've got to be present enough to hear it, and then open enough to really take in what it is that they're saying to us, and then we got to have enough courage to be able to do something with it.
Do something about it.
Because otherwise they are going to feel like they're in that space, like, well, why should I?
Right.
Because nothing's going to happen. Or why should I? Because this might turn back on me. Because again, everybody might say, I was fast, I was this, I wanted this, you know, all of that kind of outlandish stuff. So I think it starts with us, of creating that safe space for them to be able to. And I think it did start with the Me Too piece, where at least they could see Black women who were actually expressing that, you know, these things did happen to me and I wasn't okay with these things, because then it's sending a message that, okay, this is not normal. This is not something that should be happening. Where, again, I think in some of these situations, you grow up thinking that this is normal. You grow up thinking that this is okay. Because nobody has ever said that it's not.
Anybody else? Everybody's deep in thought.
Yeah, I'm deep in thought because I'm listening to some of the things that are, being said, and I'm thinking about my niece, right?
Okay.
Who's 14 years old, and I'm thinking, okay, so she's, seeing the Me Too movement, and she's seeing all the conversation that's being had on Facebook, and she's hearing what the people around her have to say about it.
Okay.
But I'm thinking, in order to make this practical and teachable, what really has to happen is that maybe I need to sit down with her and say,
Yes. I
did you watch it?
Yeah.
How much of it did you see?
Yeah.
How did you feel about what you saw? What did it make you think about?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any of your experiences or experiences of people that you know that made you think about that particular TV show?
Yeah.
Because what that conversation does is opens the floor and makes a way for her to feel comfortable, so that if there is anything in her own personal experience that's even remotely similar to that,
Right.
talk to me.
That you can talk.
Right.
You created
and
the safe
created that safe space that I was
Talk to
speaking
me.
of.
Exactly.
Tell Auntie about that.
Right.
And because I think it's also
And
easier
doing it
to tell
more
Auntie about that
than
than
just
just
go
around
and
and tell your mom.
Right.
Right.
Or, and doing it more than once.
Right.
So just because you do that the first time, and if she says, because what you might get at 14 is you might get the, oh, no, I don't know, nothing like that. That's fine. If that's what you get, you're like, okay, well, just let her know that the door is always open.
Right.
And then come back around to it again, because sometimes you would be surprised. That initial reaction is going to be, no, that's crazy. I never. But they'll think about it because you gave her something to think about, and you get, again, you open the door
And you
and
addressed
so if
it.
you come back around
Directly
again,
addressed
right.
it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is I understand watching the documentary and having conversation around that, but oftentimes our kids they attach and they connect with real life stories. And to be honest, like, we don't want to talk about being molested ourselves. Like, we don't want to talk about and had a conversation and say, I know what I'm talking about because this happened to me. We don't want to have those conversations. And I think that, for the young girls that you talk to in your families, and if you have permission from them, like, if you're having those conversations, then I think they will connect to you more. If you have a story, if you have a story, then to share your story from your perspective, and then they'll be more apt to be like, oh, because of this, that's R.Kelly and that's TV stuff. And it was, that thing was cut up in 50 million pieces and put together to give it the, TV drama, right? But you can't have TV drama when it comes from you. When you sit down with your daughters or your nieces and your cousins and say, I was molested, right? This happened to me, right? By a family member. Like, you can't say that Uncle so-and-so molested me. That's not TV. But then they can say, oh, well, he did that to me too. Because it's real. It becomes real for them. It becomes real.
So being transparent and having the conversation and just putting it out there. Right.
And I think sharing our truth. Again, it's like, if we
because you can't say speak your truth.
You're saying, right.
And I'm not speaking mine. I'm not telling my truth.
Right. But then we took ours away and we're like, oh no, I can't, that's not something that I can do, but I want you to be able to do that.
And I want you to open up to me.
Yeah.
Right. So and kids can pick up on the fake, phony foolery really quickly. Really quickly. And know that you're not coming from an authentic space. So.
And I think that breaks that generational trauma that we have going on. as a Black community, because again, it gets passed down and passed down and passed down in so many different ways and so many different directions. And it does. It starts, if we actually start to have that genuine conversation, then it starts to break that cycle. And so, you know, what happened to me won't happen to my niece. What happened to my niece won't happen to her daughter, and so forth down the line. So, yeah, I think at some point we also have to find our voice in this and be able to speak our truth.
Okay.
And not leave boys out the equation.
Oh, absolutely not.
You know, we're having this
not.
conversation about little girls, and it was a part of R.Kelly's story that you said you heard, Dr. Tanya, about it was more of a boy. It was a boy that was born in.
Really?
In his that he had relationships with men.
And there was one girl that he kind of did a makeover to make her
look like a boy. That's right.
Very short. She was dressed.
Well, look at Aaliyah.
Yes.
Look at Aaliyah. How she was, you know.
So again,
edgy.
You know, it goes back to that generational kind of thing where things were, you know, passed down. And again, hurt people hurt other people. So, and most often, the same way that you were hurt, you tend to then inflict that upon somebody else. So.
Okay. So this is good conversation. So now the last question is, what do we do about it? What's our next steps, right? Because we all have people that we can affect in our homes, in our families, in our communities. What's the next? Well, obviously one of the steps is we talking about it. We put it on live, and we gonna put it on. To go to Sexy Sistahs Talk. But what else? Like what else can we do?
Well, I think that first thing is what, you know, we just said, which is create that safe space. If each one of us agrees to, you know, for some young lady in our lives, or young man in our lives, create that safe space and start having the conversation with them. So it's great that we're having the conversation with each other, which we should, but then extend that conversation out to them. So if there is someone you're like, and just again, ask, did you see it? What you said was perfect. Because it is the thing now that is opening the door. And so then you can ask them and that's one of the things we don't do enough with kids is ask them what they think. Most of the time we want to tell them what we think.
Right.
Well, if you know, I know a lot of adults who are having these conversations, but they're like, well, I sat down with my daughter and I said, if anything ever happens, this is what you, but you never really ask, has anything ever happened? You never really said, what do you think about this? If you just open it up and let them speak, you might find out a whole lot more than, you know, what you bargained for. So it's not really telling them, like we think everything is instructing them to do something or not to do something. But it's like, wait, it's that opening it up and just asking them, you know, what are your thoughts about this? How do you feel about this? Have you ever experienced this? You know, any of those things, and then just shutting up and giving them an opportunity to speak.
That's a practice we need to take from white folks, because that's what white parents do with their kids. And when I was younger, I mean, my dad didn't ask me what I thought. You know, parents didn't care about your opinion.
Oh, you speak when you spoken to.
Right. But that's something.
Be seen and heard.
Not heard.
But that's something white people do. White people ask their children all types of questions and express. And you know, I remember when my son was younger, and I had one white girlfriend, and you know, she would allow her little daughter to say anything. You know, always getting her to talk and share her opinion. I remember thinking, that's ridiculous. I wasn't raised like that. Like our opinion, I allow my son to say, But you know, now when my son's old now he's 20, I'm thinking there is some value in asking students I'm a teacher, asking children to share their opinion, you know, but it was hard for me because,
we weren't raised that way.
No, we weren't raised that way.
Absolutely.
What? I don't care. I did not ask. Yes, I do, you know.
Or my mom would say, who paid you the thought?
Who put you right?
Yeah.
You know?
So true.
That's good.
You couldn't think. You couldn't think. And the other thing I want to say about creating a safe space, not being afraid to share our stories, because even though we want to have these conversations with other young people, but healing can't take place when you're hiding something. Whatever you're hiding, it won't heal. And so if you're not willing to open up and tell what happened to you, and not to the children, but to someone, and to get it out and to release it, then you can't help anyone else. Because that's another, right, and that's another hurt person trying to heal, and but you bring your trauma with you to the table that you're having with these young people.
Right.
And if you're not willing to say, you know, this happened to me, and you don't, I mean, sometimes people want to go back and drag the people through the mud and all that kind of stuff, and that's not what I'm saying to do if that's not your thing. But just being able to say, this happened to me. Like, this happened to me, to somebody, so you can release, and then you heal, and in the process of you healing, then you can help heal someone else, and then it becomes a domino effect of healing that takes place in the community. But as long as we hide and act as if shit didn't happen to us, and in our houses and in our churches and in schools and things like that, then it's no, we just have an idle conversation. We're just talking for no reason. It's just idle chatter. Period.
I think you brought up something that's really important, and which is you mentioned talking about what happened, but not necessarily the who and the going after them. Right. So it's important. Because I'm still sitting here thinking about this conversation I even had, right? It's important for them to understand that it's really two different things. It's two phases, I guess you could say. One is, just need you to talk about what happened. I need you to talk about the thing that happened. Really? We're not even talking about the person right now. Just get all of that out first.
Right.
We'll deal with what we're going to do about it. That's the next step. Like, that's another thing. Because you need to deal with the stuff first. And then, even, because this is the thing, even the victim has to come to a place where they decide that either they want to go after them, or you need somebody to help you to kind of lead you. I'm going to go after them for you.
Because chances are they're still afraid of that person, especially if there was some, of course. Right.
Or even
and
if they're
sometimes
not.
They may not want to go after
the person.
Right. I was about to say
sometimes, depending on when it happened and what happened, you may not even be able to go after that person.
Right.
And so sometimes you can't find peace, or people feel like they can't find peace because, or healing because, I can no longer go after that person. But sometimes it's not so much about going after that person as it is doing your own inner healing around that thing. Exactly. And it doesn't have a whole lot to do, with that other person.
And for the conversations that, you may encounter after this conversation, listening to us, or, for us who may talk to family members and friends, let them lead. Even as children, let them lead. If they say don't go after the person, don't take it upon yourself and go after the person. And if they say let's go after the person, don't take it upon yourself and say, well, we're not going to go out after them now, right? But let them lead. Don't you get on the bandwagon, I'm on it, and they're like, don't do it, because then that further traumatizes them. It further traumatizes them, even though we think we're doing something right. We're doing something right in our minds, but to them, honey, you done re-traumatized them, you done hurt them all over again, and now, but not only that, now they have to live with all of the extra that you, or we could inflict upon them with us trying to, be on the bandwagon. Well, I'm gonna get them. We get on it, and then we gonna call. We gonna call Uncle Johnny with a gun, and Grandpa. Now everybody, and then you're just like, whoa.
And now they regretting that they told you, because now it turned into this big whole thing.
Yes.
Right. All right.
Just be a listening ear.
Yeah. That's where it starts.
Good stuff, ladies. Good stuff. And now we could go all night, but it's 9:15. I mean, we've been talking for 45 minutes.
Yes.
And now something 45 minutes. So thank you so much. You think we accomplished some good stuff here?
Good conversation.
Yeah,
we had good conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I love you guys for being a part of the very first
Grown and Sexy Sisters Talk nights at the Roundtable. Yay! We love famous.
Hold on, we're Facebook famous.
That's right. Thanks for hanging with us.
Because I got a lot of people.
Yes. Thanks for hanging with us. We want to see you at the Roundtable next time.
That's right.
So thank you. This has been the first episode of Grown and Sexy Sisters Talk nights at the Roundtable. Episode 1. We got a lot more episodes to come. So thank you, ladies. Have a good night. Much love. Be blessed and stay grown and sexy, sisters.